Marc, what do we know about the election results so far and what the reaction is likely to be then in Moscow?
Yeah, so it looks as though the pro-EU party has won just enough to get another majority in parliament. It will be contested even before the vote began to be counted. The Patriotic Bloc, which is made up of a group of, demonstrably pro-Moscow parties, they already said that they didn't believe that it would be a fair vote and that they called for protests. That was before the vote count had begun. It is always going to be controversial. The Russians, I was there a week or so ago to look at what was going on in the campaign, and there was a huge amount of Russian interference. The government itself also intervened heavily by banning a number of parties that where the funding they discovered was coming from a fugitive billionaire who's in Moscow, and for a number of other reasons, all to do with Russian interference. So it has been a very tough campaign, very controversial. The stakes were high for Russia. This is a country that's on the other side of the flank of Ukraine. There's a pro-Russia separatist territory there, which they're cut off from, but which they had hoped at the beginning of the war to be able to use and to reach. It's very close to Odessa, which is another major target for President Putin. So it is not over. Russia will not simply give up, but this was a big moment, a moment at which Russia could really have achieved some important goals by simply delaying and slowing Moldova's road to the EU.
What does that road to the EU now look like, Marc?
Tough, but this is one where the EU itself has been pretty committed. It has been spending quite a lot of money in order to create benefits that voters in Moldova can see. And they have been really working quite hard with the Moldovans, who themselves, the Moldovan government, have been a bit of a star pupil in, trying to meet the pretty exacting requirements of joining the bloc. This is a rare instance, I think, where the EU has been acting fairly geopolitically, not just sort of keeping guard against the wrong kind of nation getting in, or just insisting purely on the rules. They are insisting on the rules, but at the same time, they're being quite proactive in trying to help the Moldovans to make it. It's a smaller country. It's very connected to Romania next doors. So I think there's the government's fairly confident that they have a decent chance of getting through all of the requirements over the next 3 years. Again, the EU had acted quite geopolitically. They were fully aware that if you had a pro-Russia government with an airport right the other side, an hour or two from Odessa, you could have had a real problem with the Russians using that to infiltrate behind the lines in Ukraine.